I came home from work at the usual time. My wife had been ironing one of her cocktail dresses for the past 6 years. Thinking we had plans for the evening, I was pleased. I loved taking my wife out into the city. When we walked down the street, she always looked very sexy, and the envious glances of other guys never failed to excite me. She was with me, and they were left only to watch. Her tanned skin, she was the daughter of Mexican immigrants, and deep brown eyes continued to excite me, and combined with her long, flowing hair and slim athletic body, they created a stunning image. In college, she was into crew, rowing, and still maintained a muscular physique, although her muscles had lost some of their sharpness lately as she focused more on running and aerobics than rowing. Before I could ask her about our plans for the evening, she shifted the conversation in a different direction. "You'll never guess who I ran into today," Maria said, not missing a beat. "Anthony? Anthony? Anthony?" I racked my brains trying to remember this name, especially since it belonged to someone she would be delighted to see, presumably, after a while. Only one Anthony came to mind, and I ventured a guess. "Anthony, your high school sweetheart, Anthony?" I asked. "Yes. Can you imagine? Out of nowhere after all these years." For context, Anthony was my wife's boyfriend during the last 2 years of high school. I had never met him, having met Maria in college, but I had heard of him. Oh God, how I had heard of him. They broke up only because their colleges were so far apart, but they were in love, at least according to her. And although I met my future wife during freshman orientation and we hit it off immediately, I had to settle for friendship because she wasn't ready for a relationship yet. At the end of our first year, she agreed to be my girlfriend, but she went back to her hometown, Salinas, California, for the summer. I visited her once for a few days and met her very large, very traditional Mexican family, but they welcomed this white guy into their clan without hesitation. I wondered if Anthony had appeared during that summer, but none of us brought up that topic, and I hoped it was all in the past. "Where did you run into him?" I asked. "In the lobby of my office building. I had just returned from lunch and saw him in the lobby. I was trying to figure out if it was really him when he saw me. He recognized me immediately. He's a representative for a pharmaceutical company, comes to this region every other Wednesday, and was here to meet with some doctors in this building." "Isn't that surprising?" "Yes, surprising," I agreed. I would have been even more surprised if I hadn't been concerned about how excited she was about it. I mean, what are the chances of us randomly meeting like this? It amazed me. Anyway, we're having dinner tonight to catch up. That explained the cocktail dress. I didn't like the idea of a third person being there during our dates. I preferred her to be alone. But this was a special situation, and I could deal with it to make her happy. "Oh, okay. When should I be ready to go out?" She stopped ironing. "Sorry, darling, I didn't mean that we're all having dinner, just him and me." I didn't like how that sounded. "What do you mean, just you and him? Why don't you want me to be there?" He asked if I wanted to have dinner so we could catch up, and I agreed. "We'll just talk about old times, and I don't want to worry about what you think or what you might say about what happened before I met you. I just want to be able to speak freely. Plus, you'd probably be bored the whole time. But you know I only love you, babe. Sweetheart, it's not appropriate for a married woman to meet alone with another man, especially an ex-boyfriend. Even if we assume nothing will happen, what if someone we know sees you on a date with someone other than me? Henry, it's not a date. It's just dinner between two old friends. I can't believe you're so upset about this." She put down the iron and picked up the dress to check for wrinkles. "If it's not a date," I asked, "then why are you getting one of your sexy cocktail dresses ready?" "You know I love dressing up when I go on a date," she countered. "It doesn't mean anything. It's like you don't trust me. I trust you, but it's not just a matter of trust. How would you feel if I insisted on going to dinner with one of my ex-girlfriends and didn't hesitate to tell you to stay home? I would say it's fine because I trust you and I know you love me and only me." I didn't believe that for a moment. "Maria, I'm not okay with this. You're not going to dinner with Anthony alone. Either you're not going or I'm going with you." This angered her. "You're not my father, you're my husband. I'm a grown woman, and you can't tell me what I can or cannot do. I'm going, and you're not, and if you don't like it, tough." She took the dress from the ironing board and went into the bedroom, closing the door behind her. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat at the kitchen table. We always discussed such things until we reached an agreement on how to proceed. Never once did either of us say to the other that we would do what we wanted, and if they didn't like it, tough. When she finally came out, I had to admit she looked stunning, although my main thought was that she looked too stunning for what she was about to do. Passing by me, she stopped and kissed me on the cheek. "We'll talk more about this when I get back home, okay?" I couldn't do anything about it. "We've already talked about this, and you've made your position clear. You'll do what you want, regardless of what I think. Fine, you know our rules for the future. Just don't forget to use protection. I'm not going to have sex with him, you son of a bitch. It's just dinner. Damn you." With these words, she stormed out of the house. I went to bed early. She left the house around 7 p.m., and I heard the bedroom door open around 10:30 p.m. She went straight to the shower, although she usually showered in the evenings, so there was nothing unusual about that. She slid into bed with me, and I noticed she was naked. She whispered in my ear, "Baby, I wouldn't mind today. Do you want some makeup sex?" I turned to her. "Honestly, the idea of you getting turned on by Anthony and then coming home for sex doesn't really appeal to me. I'm just curious about who you're thinking of. Plus, I don't think we've reconciled yet." I turned onto my back. As expected, it wasn't very pleasant, but her arguments didn't justify her hopes. "Well, would you prefer me to get turned on by you and then have sex with him?" she retorted. Without turning around, I said, "So, you admit that you're turned on by him?" "No, that's not what I meant. I meant that no matter what happens, I'll only have sex with you. I love you, damn it, and I don't understand why you can't understand that and trust me." She just didn't get it. I sat up and turned to face her. "And I can't understand why you don't understand why this bothers me. It doesn't matter who you were to him before, but now you're my wife, and it seems like my feelings should matter to some extent. They always did before, but now, with St. Anthony in town, suddenly I'm just an obstacle to overcome so you can do what you want." Her head dropped. "You're right, babe. I'm sorry. I should have been more attentive to your feelings. I got caught up in the moment, excited about seeing him again, and forgot who really matters to me. Can you forgive me?" Relieved that she finally understood, I pulled her close to me. "Of course, I can forgive you, sweetheart." She looked up at me with her beautiful brown eyes. "And now can we make love?" We could, and we did. I forgot about it until 2 weeks later when Maria called and said she was staying late at work. She needed to finish a special project. It was Wednesday, the day when old Anthony was supposed to be passing through on his regular schedule. I couldn't believe it was just a coincidence. And on the way home from work, I decided to stop by her office. On the way, I bought a couple of sandwiches, pretending that I was just bringing her dinner. Aren't I considerate? I registered at the security desk and headed to her office. Maria worked in the reception of a large insurance company, and it was the first time in 3 years that she had to stay late at work. The entrance door was locked as it was after hours, so I knocked. The door was glass, so she saw me as she approached it. I expected the office to be empty, but she was sitting at her desk working, and of course, she turned around as soon as she saw me at the door. Her beautiful smile lit up her face. "Hi, baby, what a pleasant surprise," she said as she came over and kissed me. "What brings you here?" "I brought you a sandwich for dinner. I thought we could have dinner together, even though you had to stay late at work." "How sweet. Let's eat then, but let's be quick. The longer I spend without working, the longer I'll have to stay here." We ate for about 15 minutes, talked about our days, and then I let her get back to her tasks. I drove home feeling foolish for doubting her. Maybe that dinner was the end of it all. They made up, she cleared him from her mind, and that was it. I was ready to trust her, until it all repeated itself 2 weeks later. I received the same phone call about her staying late at work for another special project. If it was true, it meant the company was entrusting her with more responsibility, which was good. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was just an excuse. The timing was too coincidental. This time, I simply called her, even though it was her direct line. I knew the caller ID would recognize me, and she would pick up, letting me know she was at her desk. Unlike a call to her mobile phone, which she could answer regardless of her location, it seemed like a straightforward way to verify she was at her desk when she said she would be. The whole office was equipped with cameras, so it was highly unlikely she would try to do something in the office. I called her at 5:45 and again at 6:30, and both times she picked up on the second ring, without any hint of anything unusual. A quick, "I love you, miss you, want to hear your voice," and that was it. That's when I calmed down, confident that she was faithful, and I was just being paranoid. When she came home on time the following Wednesday, when Anthony was in town, I finally accepted that it was all over. 2 weeks later, Maria called again, saying she was staying late at work, but it was on a Thursday, not Wednesday, and I relaxed. This continued every other Thursday, but I still called at least once each time to keep my head straight. She always answered. Perhaps it would have continued like that if not for the office party thrown by Mireya's insurance company, which took place about 4 months into this ordeal. It happened after work on a Friday in the banquet hall of a nearby Mexican restaurant. They held 2 such events a year, one at Christmas and one in June when this event occurred. I recognized some faces but didn't know their names since I saw these people so rarely. Throughout the evening, I chatted with some other participants. Some of them were spouses, significant partners, and some were employees. The fateful conversation started with an elderly woman named Sheila, who introduced herself as the office manager and chief coordinator of extra work. "So, you're the one putting an end to my married life," I joked. She looked puzzled. "I apologize if that's the case, but I'm not quite sure what you mean," she said. Trying to keep it light, I mentioned the special projects regularly assigned to Mireya, causing her to stay a couple of hours late a couple of times a month. Her expression turned serious. "I'm sorry, Henry, but I'm a bit confused," Sheila said. "Over the past few months, I haven't assigned any additional projects to your wife. We had only a couple, and both were given to other people. I know that in recent months, she has sometimes worked late, but that was done to make up for the 3-hour lunches she took to complete assignments." Well, didn't I feel stupid? I muttered some excuse about being distracted while a huge knot formed in my stomach. I headed to the bathroom but somehow managed to keep my dinner down. I took my wife at her word. That's what trust means, and it seemed like everything was falling apart. The idea that she was staying late to cover for long lunches just didn't occur to me. The switch to Thursdays was explained quite simply. Anthony could have just changed his route. Maybe he did it because I seemed suspicious, checking up on her, or maybe it was just a coincidence. Either way, everything was clear now. The only thing missing was evidence. When the next, every second Thursday, came around, I parked my friend's car near my wife's office building. And, of course, just after 12 o'clock, I saw my wife and the person I thought was Anthony come out of the lobby, holding hands, heading towards the parking lot. I took a few pictures as they walked. I was a bit surprised by how open they were. Maybe her colleagues didn't know exactly what I looked like, but I assumed they knew it wasn't me. They got into a Ford Taurus. Mireya had a Camry, so I assumed it was his car and drove off. I followed right behind them. The traffic was busy enough for me to stay close without worrying about being noticed, and they pulled into a Super 8 motel, circling around it from behind and skipping the office. Clearly, it was planned. I parked nearby and took pictures of them. He led them inside, opening the door to a hotel room. They stopped at the door, and she kissed him passionately, and I saw his hand move to her chest. My stomach jumped, and I noticed she was still wearing her rings. I wondered if it excited him that she wore my rings when they were having sex. While waiting, I made several calls, arranged to meet with a lawyer, and informed the office that I would be absent for a few days. But mostly, I sat and waited. Finally, around 2:30, the door opened. I started snapping pictures again. Mireya was still buttoning and straightening her clothes. Her hair was noticeably tousled. I didn't need action shots to understand what was going on, nor did I need them. The fact that she was with him in the hotel was evidence enough for me. I put away my phone and headed home. I was grateful that we hadn't started a family or bought a house. This breakup would have been quite straightforward in terms of things. There were only our cars and a bit of money in the bank that could easily be split 50-50. The call came as expected. She was working late again on another project. I just said everything was fine and we'd see each other around 7:30. I didn't call her in the evening, thinking it wouldn't make sense, but she noticed and I had to think further. "Sweetheart, I've been looking forward to your calls. You used to call me every time I stayed late at work, just to say you love me. What's changed?" "Sorry, darling. I was working on something in the garage, lost track of time, and before I knew it, you were already on your way home. I promise not to forget again, though I hope late nights will soon be over. Soon, I hope. If not, then I'll ask for a short break and request someone else to take over the projects." I firmly decided that the next time would be the last. I did everything I could, even split our finances. I paid all the bills and handled banking operations so that she wouldn't notice anything. Although I knew what would happen, I didn't pursue her anymore. I had everything I needed. So when she called and said she was delayed again, I was at work and not surprised. On the way home, I had a snack. I ate, but I didn't taste anything. Then I started packing my things. There were a few hours left before Maria arrived, and I only had clothes and toiletries. The entire apartment decor was Maria's style, and the kitchen items were cheap and generic. I didn't need any of it. I called her, as before, to leave everything as it was one last time. By 7:25, when Maria returned, I was fully packed and ready to leave, and my things were already loaded into the car. She was in a good mood when she walked in the door. "Hi, darling," she said. "How was your day?" She tried to kiss me, but I dodged. "Maria, we need to talk." "All right, dear, let me put these things down." We sat at the kitchen table, where so many memorable moments had happened over the years of our life together. She just smiled at me, as if we were about to discuss whether to buy the new sofa we had been considering. She didn't even suspect what awaited her. "So, lately you've been staying late at work often. How are your projects coming along?" "Great, great. Seems like they're really impressed with my work." "I hope it means good prospects. Tell me about them." "What?" Of course, she didn't expect this, thinking that just saying she had projects would be enough and I would never express a desire to know the details. She didn't think that far ahead. "Projects? Tell me about them. What have you been working on?" "Well, just, some analysis, of tariffs in certain areas and, stuff like that." "I'm glad everything is going well for you. Is there anything you wanted to tell me?" "Just that I love you, but you already know that." I thought I did, until I found out about you and Anthony." She sighed in frustration. "Not this again, Henry. Damn it, I haven't done anything with him. I haven't even seen him since that one time, several months ago." "Haven't seen him for several months? Is that true? Are you sure about that?" "Yes, Henry, I'm sure." But her facial expression betrayed the uncertainty in her words. She was worried. "Then maybe you'll tell me who this guy is in these photos from 2 weeks ago, if it's not Anthony." I laid out on the table the photos I had taken, showing her coming out of the room in disarray. Her head dropped. Next on the table were divorce papers. "No, Henry, please. It was nothing, just nothing. Can we forget about it? Counseling or whatever else, whatever you want." "Of course not, Maria. I told you when we started dating that cheating is a deal breaker for me, and I don't accept it. You're my wife, and just in the past few months, there have been countless instances where I wasn't even the last person you had sex with. And then you lied about it until I had to show you the photos. You showed complete disrespect towards me and our marriage. There's no chance for us. I thought we had a good marriage. I'm sorry that wasn't enough for you." "Oh, Henry, please never think this has anything to do with you. I love you with all my heart, and it was never about you. I can't even explain it. All those old school feelings came rushing back when I saw him for the first time, and I wanted to experience them again. That first evening, we just had dinner, and I thought that would be it. Then he kept invading my thoughts. When I met you, I was a virgin, so I never experienced this with someone I considered my first love. I got caught up in it, and when he came back after 2 weeks and invited me to lunch, I agreed. In the end, we ended up in a hotel. I did it willingly. I wish I could say I didn't want to, but I agreed. After that, it got easier each time, but less enjoyable. I thought about ending it, but obviously, I was too late. I'm sorry, Henry. Please, I love you. Can I do something, somehow fix this situation? I'm very sorry too, Maria. I truly loved you. I walked out of the apartment for the last time. 4 months later, the divorce was finalized. At least she respected me by not resisting. I got a 2-bedroom apartment, and to everyone's surprise, Maria transferred to another office and moved in with Anthony. I focused entirely on work until the divorce was fully processed, received a nice bonus, and put myself in line for a promotion when a major Japanese electronics manufacturing company offered us their business based on my presentation. I still missed her, although I knew I could never be with her again. She had always been the most beautiful woman in the world to me, so how could I stay with her after that? Almost a year after that last evening at the kitchen table, I received a message from Maria saying she was in town and asking if we could meet up for a drink. We agreed to meet at a small bar near my apartment. When I walked in, I saw her at the other end of the room and immediately noticed that she had lost weight. She still looked beautiful, but in a different way. I warmly greeted her, gave her a slight hug, and kissed her on the cheek. "So, what brought you to town, Maria?" I asked, sitting at the table across from her. I ordered a cola, as I never had a preference for alcohol, which Maria knew, but slightly surprised her by adding a strawberry daiquiri. She noticed. Alcohol, Henry? That's not like you. Over the past year, everything has changed a lot. Life is full of surprises. Perhaps that's true. Actually, I've been thinking about moving back. I miss this place. Can Anthony work in this area? It was a genuine question. I had already forgotten about anger and resentment. We are no longer together. He cheated on me. Is that so? How ironic, I thought. It turns out I wasn't the only regular stop on his route, even then, and he didn't stop with any of them even after I moved in with him. I'm sorry to hear that. How did you find out? It seems there are other husbands who turned out to be less understanding than you. Some of them gathered together to physically express their dissatisfaction with him sleeping with their wives and suggested he move to another place. After he left the hospital, he disappeared. I have no idea where he went. She didn't look very disappointed. That couldn't have happened to a nicer person. So, are you trying to return to work at that company? I am trying, but everything is on hold while I negotiate one specific case. She smiled at me with that smile of hers, the one I could never resist. But everything had changed, as I've said before. And what is it, Maria? As if I didn't know. Henry, I deeply regret what I did. I was foolish, falling in love with a memory, with someone who no longer exists and perhaps never did. We had a wonderful marriage and I still love you. I've learned my lesson. Is there a chance? At that moment, a figure in a knee-length blue dress entered the door and made her way to my table, or more precisely, to me. The tall blonde woman put her purse on one of the other chairs and kissed me on the cheek. Hello, darling. Sorry, I'm late. I had a prolonged business meeting. Is this my drink? Without waiting for an answer, she took the daiquiri and sipped it through the straw for a long time. I know. I got your message. Is everything settled? Of course not. It never is, you know that. But I'm done talking about work and ready to start our evening. I began the introductions. Renee, this is Maria, my ex-wife. Maria, this is my girlfriend, Renee. Nice to finally meet you, Renee murmured, and it was genuinely sincere. I was thrilled when Henry told me you were in town and we would meet for a drink. I've heard a lot about you. Hopefully, some good things, Maria joked. Mostly, actually, he speaks very highly of you. Except for the last few months of your marriage, but I suppose that was to be expected, Renee replied. I saw Mireille's eyes become slightly moist. He's a good guy, she said. Hold on to him. Be smarter than I was. I plan to. We've already set a date. Silently and somewhat pityingly, I watched as Mireille's eyes found the wedding ring on Renee's finger, and she seemed to deflate a bit as I looked at her. Congratulations. That's wonderful news. I'm happy for you both. Renee smiled sadly. You hoped to get him back, didn't you? I did, admitted Maria. I hoped that over time we could try again. I didn't know you were seeing someone, Henry, let alone engaged. I hoped that maybe you would try to find happiness with me. But it seems I no longer have a chance. Perhaps it's time for me to go. I wish you wouldn't, said Renee, placing her hand on Mireille's. I really wanted to get to know you better. Maria looked visibly puzzled. Why? Why do you want to meet the ex-wife of your fiancé? Maria, you were a big part of his life for a long time and very important to him. You helped make him the person I fell in love with. Why wouldn't I want to get to know you better, maybe even be friends? At the same time, I'll never allow you two to be alone together, but I think that's just common sense. Yes, Maria said ironically, as someone once told me, it's not wise for someone in a relationship to be alone with their ex. If only she had followed that advice when I gave it to her.
Thank you for being with us and listening until the end. If you found it interesting, please subscribe, give us a like, and leave your comments.